Thank you. Hold on, Andy. And thank you, Mark, for that very honest, accurate, and objective introduction of one of Canada's most famous and well-loved cartoonists. Could I take a minute just to add my favorite Donato story? This is as told by the late Ben Wicks. Ben was walking up Parliament Street one sunny afternoon, and he saw two workers busily engaged in Toronto's favorite pastime, digging up the streets. One of the men jumped out of the trench, rushed up to Ben Wicks and said, "You are the greatest cartoonist in the world. Every day I look at the paper to see your drawing." And he called to the other man, Luigi, come here. Shake the hand of a great man. This is the famous Mr. Donato. And Ben told that story everywhere. And it is true. So let me present this plaque to the famous Mr. Donato. The real Donato. Know all ye by these presents that Andy Donato, editorial cartoonist and artist, has been named a member of the Canadian News Hall of Fame. November 22, 2016. A multiple award winner as a newspaper cartoonist and as a painter, his distinguished career spans more than 50 years, and he's still going strong.
Yeah. Thank you. It's wonderful. I'm a little overwhelmed right now. First of all, thank you, Bono, for that introduction. For a minute there, I thought you were introducing somebody else. I also want to thank Les Payette, Mark, of course, who led the charge, Tom McMillan, good friend, and my wife, Diane, who led the charge on this to get me inducted into this Hall of Fame. And I can remember the first time I saw the plaques with all the names of the people, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to have your name up there? It finally happened. A cartoonist, an editorial writer from the Star of all things, once told me that a cartoonist's job is to come out of the hills after the battle and shoot the wounded. And a good friend of mine, Dick Loker at the Chicago Tribune, always said to everybody that he was like the blind javelin thrower at the Olympics. That he didn't get a lot of recognition, but he always had the crowd's attention. I've often thought of this job, and the only way I can think of it is just being paid to eat ice cream. You didn't get that, did you? Anyway, it's been 54 years of cartooning, and I remember, and tonight is, when I think of it, the 22nd, one of the great stories of all time, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, was the day that I really remember. I had just gotten into it. Ooh, Italians talk with their hands, it's a problem. I remember coming after lunch, going to the editorial department at the Telegram, and this eerie sight of all these editors standing around listening to a little transistor radio the day that they shot John F. Kennedy. And I was standing there, and Doug McFarlane, JDM, better known as Big Dome, sometimes called Lard Ass, was sitting there writing headlines, and he wrote, "Kennedy shot, dies." And he handed it to Larry Reed, the news editor, and said, "Get that set, the biggest type we have." And he came back up and said, we haven't got type big enough. And I don't know what, maybe I blurted out, set it in Letraset. And I remember all these editors turning and looking at me and saying, what the hell's Letraset? And I said, oh, I'll show you. And I took them over to my artboard, took out a sheet of Letraset with ballpoint pen and transferred a little tiny letter, half an inch high, onto a piece of paper. And I said, give it to the engraving department, it'll blow it up, and you've got a front page headline. And Doug McFarlane looked at me and said, do it. Well, I felt like my hand was on a jackhammer. I had to letter the headline for the Sun, or for the Telegram, Kennedy shot dies. And how I did it, I'll never know, because it came out exactly even on both sides. And they blew it up 900%, came across the front page. And that was kind of my initiation into news and politics. And I started to get excited. Within a few months, I drew my first editorial cartoon, drew it, took it into Al Beaton, the cartoonist, to show it to him and say, is this any good? And Charlie Nichols, the editor, saw it and said, oh, I can run that. Al's off today. Well, they ran the cartoon in the Telegram. Time magazine reprinted it. Montreal Star reprinted it. And I thought, this is great. What an easy job, one picture a day, it's great. So a couple of months later, the editor walked up and he said, Al Beaton's on holidays next week, you're filling in for him. I said, that's okay, it's great, I can do that. He said, you come to the editorial meeting at 11 o'clock every day and bring 3 to 5 ideas. I sank, I thought, oh my God, how do you do that? Anyway, I somehow got through it. But you go into that boardroom with 8 editors, and John Bassett, who had the loudest voice I've ever heard in my life, and you go through it. And I often think back that there they were, 8 editors and the publisher and me sitting there with my little scribbles and to show them. And 7, 8 years later, the Sun started, and the editorial board meeting was in a 8-foot by 8-foot office, Peter Worthington and me. That was it. That was the editorial board. We worked from there. But I have to, when the newspapers always amazed me that there was this great competition between the Star and the Telegram. And every day, the first papers to come off the press were bundled up and shipped to the Star, and the Star sent their papers to the Telegram so we could see what was going on. Well, when the Gerda Munsinger story broke in Ottawa, and for those who don't know, Gerda was a German prostitute sleeping with a couple of cabinet ministers, a big story, and the telly printed a fake edition that had nothing about Gerda, but inside we had received a whole bunch of pictures of Gerda, in her convertible. Stop it. And anyway, they were in the real paper. The fake papers were sent to the Star. The Star sent their papers over, and nothing was on the front page. And we thought, great, we've got them. About an hour later, somebody walked in off the street with the Star, the headline, Star reporter finds Gerda in Germany. And you never saw so many guys deflated in your life. I got called in, and they said, we want you down to Ottawa because there are no photographs in the House of Commons, there's no TV in those days. Sit down and draw all the main characters that are involved. So I fly down to Ottawa, and they get me a press pass, and I go in the press gallery, and I'm sitting there, and I'm drawing Diefenbaker and Pearson and Cowett and Dummy Douglas and Sevier and George Hees, and I do a whole bunch of drawings. I get in a cab and rush out to the airport, and I send them air freight back to Toronto. And then I run out into the airport, get on a payphone, and I phone in the waybill number. If you didn't give them the waybill number, they'd never find the drawings. And that was a key element. Then I head back to the press gallery. Fraser Kelly says, hey, your buddy's down here doing the same as you. And I said, who's that? He says, Duncan McPherson. I said, oh, I had never met Duncan. So I phoned him. He was at the Chateau Laurier. And I said, come on down, I'll buy you a drink. And he said, I got to finish my drawing. I'll meet you in about an hour. I said, okay. An hour later, he comes here. Duncan arrives, and we start drinking. He says, oh, geez, I got to remember to phone in the waybill number. And I said, oh, yeah, I'll remind you. Have a double. thinking, now, I didn't drink much in those days. And Duncan had a third-degree black belt in drinking. Let me tell you, he could drink. So I'm buying him drinks. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm leaving a bar in Hull, because they closed at 2 o'clock. Duncan has the piano player over the piano, ready to punch him out. And I'm thinking, I did it. You know, he didn't get the real bill number. And I head back to my hotel, fly back to Toronto the next day with a big hangover. And I go into the office and I pick up the telegram and open it up, and there's all the Hansard and my cartoons are in there. And I thought, that's great. And then the Star's there, and I pick it up and open it up, and I almost had a heart attack. There it was. And still see it to this day. This 2 pages in this magnificent drawing, with Diefenbaker on this side and Pearson on this side, and all their cabinet ministers, and they're all up yelling at each other. Oh, stop it! And I mean, that was the best lesson I ever got in political cartooning. He was such a master, Duncan. He was just fabulous. He changed the whole face of cartooning, I think. But the competition was so great that I remember the Marilyn Bell swim across the lake was a classic, where the Star rented an ambulance and had it down by the shore. And soon as Marilyn came out of the water, they wrapped her in blankets and stuck her in the ambulance, took her to a hospital where they had a battery of photographers and reporters to interview her. And Dorothy Howarth, who's in the Hall of Fame, rented a nurse's outfit and was sitting in the ambulance. And she interviewed Marilyn on the way to the hospital. It's a great time. Anyway, I have to tell you my my story of was Ben Wicks's name came up, and my good friend Peter Worthington. Years ago, the two of them ran off to Biafra to do a story on the troubles over there and the starvation and stuff. And on the way back, they had such horrible food, they decided to write a book on really awful recipes, like fried monkey brains and all really awful stuff. So I was asked to design the cover for the book. So they wind up getting Wicks and Worthington in the studio, and they're wearing bathing suits, and they're wearing little doily aprons to cover the bathing suits. And that's all they got a chef's hat on, and Worthington's standing with his arms folded like this in a frying pan, and Ben is kneeling down with a chef's hat and a couple of pots. And they take the picture, and that was the cover, and had the Naked Gourmet on it, and Ben Wicks and Ray Worthington. And I'm looking at this picture, and it was a nice big glossy print. And I took it down to the engraving department, where there's an artist named Jerry Squires that I went to school with. And I said, can you airbrush out the paint, the doily aprons so that they're naked? And he said, certainly. So he airbrushed them out. And now I said, no, you have to put something back in there because the genitalia is missing. Well, the best way to describe it is Ben Wicks looked like a donkey, and Peter looked like a cherub. And we shot it, and screened it, and then put the type back on, the Naked Gourmet, and ran proofs, and we stuck them up all over the editorial department. Well, Wicks got a big kick out of it. Ben had a great sense of humor, but Peter didn't. Peter came back, and he was just livid. He was anyway, he finally calmed down and got a kick out of it. But it was 4 years later, the sun had started, and I'm sitting at my art board, and the phone rings, and it's Peter, and he says, come on to the editorial department, I want to show you something. I said, okay, so I went out to the editorial department, and he's standing there, and the place is empty because it's in the morning, and nobody worked in the morning in a morning newspaper. And there's a photographer there, and there's another guy, and he hands me a photograph, and he says, have a look at this. And I said, what? He says, well, you can't see it with your glasses. And he takes my glasses off. As soon as he took them off, wham! The guy hit me with a pie right in the face. I mean, I thought, you're in the middle of the day, the guy hits you with a pie or what? What's this about? Some guy had come in, and you pay him $50 and he hits anybody you want with a pie. And Peter was doing a story on it, and I've got this wonderful picture of me with all this pie all over my face. Anyway, I I must do this because John, which congratulations, it's great to see you here. I first met him at the Telegram years ago, introduced his family, and I want my family's over here too. My daughter Roseanne, my son Andy, and my son Tony. And I have two others, and they couldn't make it tonight because they're working or doing something. Anyway, the job has been, to sum it up in one word, fun. I mean, just great fun. I've had a wonderful time, and I hopefully keep doing it as long as the boss over here says I can do it. Anyway, thank you very, very much. It's a great honor, and I just feel the best. Thank you.